Morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain? Who could complain? Be a shelter. Good morning. T-Dog Yo-Yo. How's it going, my man? Good morning, Bitcoiners. Let me make sure my audio is hooked up correctly. Looks like we're good. Looks like we're good. Be a shelter. Lots of winning happening out there today. Yeah. The only thing that sucks about today is that Bitcoin has pumped so much already in the morning. I've missed my, I like to do a Friday buy and then it goes up in the day. Like that's usually fun, I don't get to do that today. I got to worry about, well, whatever. We don't care about that kind of stuff. Still going to buy it. We don't care. We're crazy. We're psychos. Good morning, Bitcoiners. Good morning, Ben. Bitcoin Deb, howdy. B for victory. Bomatan. Good morning, Bitcoiners. TGIF. Good morning, John. Hope you're doing well. Be a shelter adds again. Sun is up. Bitcoin is up. You're giving away my lines, but that's okay. You didn't mention that. Well, I guess it's up is saying it's running, but we all know what's coming. It's okay. Biden is too old and senile to be charged with crimes. We're going to be talking about that today, of course. Aqualodge, good morning. David, good morning. Time for a face melt. We got some fun stuff to talk about today. We sure do. Good morning from Minnesota. Oh, how's it going, Lightning Bend? Sun's up in Florida, Bitcoiner. We love it. I'm early, Double B. Not too early. We're ready to go. We're ready to go. Greetings and salutations, Richard King. Indeed, greetings. Hey, how was the meetup last night? Let them know in the comments. Good morning. We like corn. We love the corn. Robert. Good morning. Edgar asks, why are we bullish, Nolan? You gotta wait till tonight. I'm going on BTC Sessions show to talk about why are we bullish. I'm doing the why are we bullish show tonight. So there you go. You'll have to wait for that answer, Edgar. But there you go. Good morning, you crazy psycho Bitcoiners. SunTech working in Puerto Rico. Jose, let me just remind everyone, the sun is absolutely working here on the Atlantic coast of the Caribbean, and Bitcoin's running, everyone. It's running up in the exchange markets, so that's also good. But the exchange markets, of course, is just a small little feature of Bitcoin, right? That we love. But I guess all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new in crazy fiat world. So what are these psycho fiat people saying today? What's going on in their world? What happened in fiat world yesterday? Well, a lot. But let's get into it slowly, right? Let's get into it slowly, okay? How about I've seen we're early here. I'm a little ahead because I'm on Atlantic time, so it's a little less racist when I do the show at 9 a.m. Because I'm on 9 a.m. time. Until America changes its clocks, I will be a little less racist than most East Coast people, which is great, right? I'm actually aiming to be less racist, but I don't want to sleep in, so it's really hard. But here's another thing, right? So over in England right now, it's much later. So in some ways, the English are less racist at this time than East Coast Americans. If there's people out there who don't know, we're of course referring to one of the greatest Moscow time submissions ever, which is getting up early is racist, right? But it turns out Britain, they might have an advantage in wake up time to be less racist. That's good. But this headline here says they got a lot to worry about. All right. Britain's countryside is a racist colonial white space where people of color are often framed as out of place, wildlife charities say. It's true. CNBC says over 18 million rental units are exposed to climate hazards as extreme weather becomes more common. It's only 18 million? How many houses are in the world? I don't know. I think they're all exposed to the climate, but they say there's only 18. That's better than I thought, so that's good. This one's good. Super mayor of Illinois town, who spends lavishly on flights, steakhouses, while village faces debt, slams critics for attacking a black woman in power, right? You'd have to know it's important to the story, the skin color. Like all these stories, they're always important. Skin color, right? You gotta tell skin color when you talk about mainstream news. Oh, this one's good. This one's good. Okay, Washington Post had a few things to say. Here's one about Trump yesterday. All right, so they're talking here about some fact checking of presidents and former presidents, right? So, fact checker. Former President Donald Trump regularly mischaracterizes tweets that his staff regarded as woefully inadequate on the day of the January 6th attacks. They're still fact checking his Twitter from January 6th in the headlines. That's a story in the Washington Post today. Trump's January 6th tweets. He's tweeted once since January 6th, and it was his mugshot. But they're still going back. What about his things? Well, if you read the Washington Poop, you would have been you might have missed that Putin had his interview with Tucker yesterday. But they did have one story covering it, and I'm going to read the headline to you. This is the headline from the Washington Post and their coverage of the Putin-Carlson interview last night. Here's what they say happened over on the Washington Post. Vladimir Putin spent the first 30 minutes of his 2-hour-long interview with former Fox News host Tucker Carlson giving a revisionist historical tirade on the founding myths of Russia and Ukraine and breaking up of the Soviet Union and NATO expansionism. That's what he said. It's okay. Warning. This is from security guys. Ready? We heard a little bit yesterday from Putin about Russia, but we got someone else warning us here. This is the Danish guys. Everyone, listen up. This is the most important thing you're going to hear all day. Don't pay attention to Bukele. Don't pay attention to all these other leaders, okay? The Danish defense minister warns Russia could attack NATO in 3 to 5 years. The Danish defense minister, everyone. That's what they're going with here. The Danish defense minister. They come out further and they say it cannot be ruled out that within a 3 to 5 year period, Russia will test Article 5 of NATO's solidarity. That was not NATO's assessment in 2023. This is new knowledge that is coming to you now. His name is Troels Lund Poulsen. Troels Lund Poulsen. Okay, trolls. Trolls. So everyone, listen to the Danish defense minister, okay? He's the most important person in the whole puzzle. You want to know what's going on in the world? Go ask the Danish defense minister. His name is spelled Troels. I don't know. Troels Lund. Troels Lund Poulsen. And this is coming at you from the Jyllands-Posten newspaper. It's going to get covered in America, I'm telling you, right? I'm just getting it first. I read the Jyllands-Posten newspaper this morning. New fake news source. Troels Lund Poulsen warns NATO. Now you know. All right. Here's another one from the Washington Post, right? Jennifer Rubin today, right? Jennifer Rubin on the Washington Post has a really pressing and important article, everyone. She asks what Biden's second term would look like. What Biden's second term is going to look like, everyone. And then she says that voters should be grilling Democratic states candidates on their willingness to prune or uproot the filibuster. That would make a world of difference to Biden, the country, and our democracy. So the Washington Post has some tips here for policy objectives for Biden in his second term, right? What would it look like? It's going to be great, right? It's going to look great. No word yet on if stealing stuff will continue to be in the second term. Well, they didn't mention much of that, right? They didn't mention that. Now, there's a ton. I can't even get through it all. So it's a bit of a special edition of Moscow Time today. Just a second. Kids are at the window looking in, trolling me like trolls, troels, lund. So it's a bit of a special edition today because there's so much news about Biden in the fake news that I don't really know how to get between Moscow time and the theme, right? They're kind of all one and the same today. And you know, Moscow time is coming to you straight from Moscow, right? Because we have the interview. Just a second. So, where was I? So, Danish defense minister. Yes. So, first of all, I'll read some of the headlines just because yesterday as well, and this is what makes the whole thing so funny, right? There's a contrast principle, and I've used contrast principle a few times here. I did a great board once on the contrast principle. Basically, it's one of the easiest ways to learn new things by showing contrast, right? It's a much better way of learning and perceiving things than memorizing, you know, lists or facts or memorizing trivia knowledge, right? One of the best ways to actually have an impression and to change your mind or learn something new is by seeing contrast. And the Putin interview yesterday, and a lot of people have brought this up, but the Putin interview yesterday, where he went on with accurate, detailed knowledge, whether it's true or not, I'm not sure. I have a bit of an understanding of this stuff. I will mention towards the end where I disagree a lot about with what Putin said, but it's technical things about nations and where we're headed and where we can go. And even his concept of a nation of Russia that far back is not exactly that, right? Nations as we know them are a new thing. They're not an old thing. They're a brand new thing, kind of. So there were kingdoms and other things, but anyway, this organizing principle around nations, I continue to have a disagreement with people like Jack Posobiec, who continues to say the nation state is the greatest vehicle for human prosperity of all time. I think it was for a while, but there's other things happening. So we'll get into all of that, though. But first, let's just talk about the contrast. And a lot of people brought this up. So I'll read a bunch of the headlines in a second because some of them are so funny. I mean, there's just so many funny ones today. But here's what Cernovich wrote, right? Cernovich says the following. He says, Putin was supposed to have died or become senile from too much prednisone. Remember all those health hoax stories about him? Tonight, the world got an apples to apples comparison of Putin and Biden. Because, of course, Biden tried to do a press conference yesterday. He tried to do a press conference, okay? And it was hilarious. I mean, one of the funniest things you'll ever see. So the reason he was trying to do the press conference, and indeed to see them contrasted in this way, right? Putin and his thing with the half an hour and going on and on and on and on about the history of Russia and that whole region and Ukraine versus Biden. So here are the headlines. It started yesterday with the special counsel saying that he was mentally incapacitated. So this actually happened yesterday, okay? So the special counsel that was looking into his boxes hoax had interviewed him, and they gave an interview, right? And in the interview, a lot of people have been handing it around. Matt Visser. So Matt Visser, right, even covered this. Matt Visser is the fella who gave Biden a Catholic award. Biden got some award for being a great Catholic, right? And there was no mention of his illegitimate grandchild with the hooker that Biden, that Hunter knocked up, all this stuff, right? So Matt Visser is a, he sucks a little Biden stuff, right? And he covered it, and he says, full report from special counsel Robert Hur on President Biden's mishandling of classified materials. Conclusion, this is his take. This is a propagandist take, right? Conclusion was no chargeable offense, but there are a number of aspects likely to create political problems for Joe Biden. There's little political problems. But an actual lawyer, looked at it. His name is Jarvis Best. And he says, damn, dude, this is madness. I thought Matt was joking, but no. The Department of Justice actually concluded that Biden was too old and feeble-minded to commit a crime. What they wrote was, we have also considered that at trial, Mr. Biden would likely present himself to a jury, as he did during our interview with him, as a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. Based on our direct interactions with and observations with him, he is someone for whom many jurors will want to identify reasonable doubt. They're saying he can't take responsibility. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, by then a former president well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness. So because this came out, now some people come out and say that it was deliberate, right? That this was the guy, this Robert Hur guy, was attempting to criticize Biden in an interesting and constructive and new way, right? There's people who said, well, Jack Smith with the boxes case went after Trump in a certain way and it's getting ignored and it's not happening. This other case is completely different because it has a lot of traction and it resonates, right? So here's what the fake news had to do, right? Biden had to go out and give an interview. And then we saw more examples of exactly what was in the special counsel thing. But here's the fake news, right? Here's the fake news trying to carry water for the Bidens on this. Some of it is just, it's too funny. So here's what we get. Breaking news. President Biden lashed out angrily after a special counsel found he had carelessly handled a classified material. Oh my goodness. So, President Biden lashed out angrily after a special counsel found he carelessly handled classified materials and seemed to be a forgetful elderly man, even though the prosecutor also concluded evidence was not strong enough to charge him. That's the Washington Post, okay? It gets better. It gets better. Special counsel Robert K. Hur's report painted a devastating portrait of President Biden, whose age has become a central issue in his re-election campaign, saying his memory was significantly limited and that he had limited precision and recall. Here's MSNBC's headlines. How in the hell dare he raise that? President Biden slammed special counsel Robert Hur's claim that he struggled to remember details about his son Beau's death. I'm well-meaning, I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing, is what he said. But it starts to get better. Because then he tries to come out and prove he does. Remember what I've been saying? He's the Craig Wright of presidents. He tries to come out and prove, right? He tries to come out and prove that his mind is fine. But then he says that Mexico had failed to seal the border with Gaza and Israel. That was this example, right? Well, they both have pyramids, so I can get why everyone's picking up on the pyramid connection, right? That didn't work out. So they go into the thing with Beau and the thing with Egypt, and he forgot where he got the rosary, right? So he tries to explain that he's affected by Beau's death. And then he says, I swear the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from, and then he can't remember where he got the rosary. It's funny. It's funny to laugh at people whose brains are in this position, and then people ask for them to be in power, and they got what they asked for, and now we get to laugh, right? That's the way this kind of stuff works. So he expressed anger. He had a real sundowner moment, like the kind of thing that he needed ice cream. He needed bonus helpings of ice cream when he got off the stage, right? So it went very, very poorly, and the contrast is important. And again, one of the things I've been bringing up for a long time is the concept of him as leader of the free world, and just how mismatched the name of the president, this fake job title, the leader of the free world that we invented for World War II, right? That title, how it's applied to him, and how that would be a problem in the future. I've said this many, many times, that it would be a big problem in the future, that having that title, leader of the free world, and then Biden trying to embody it would actually create a reaction situation where people would say, well, is he really? Because one of the most important things we found out in the Putin Tucker interview yesterday was indeed Putin has gone through his history of relations, his bilateral history of relations with US presidents. And then what happens not long after, he comes to agreements with US presidents. And it doesn't look like a lot of It doesn't look like the president has had much power in deciding relations with Russia for a long time. So this is what we learned. This is what we learned. This is from Eric Avenante. He says, Tucker Carlson asks him, so twice you've described US presidents making decisions and then being undercut by their agency heads. So it sounds like you're describing a system that is not run by the people who are elected, in your telling. Putin says that's right. And so Eric says, this is why the media was freaking out about the interview. So on a number of occasions, he described it with Bill Clinton. So the time he asked Bill Clinton if he can join NATO, Bill Clinton said, are you serious? And he said, yes. And then Bill said, I think so. So Bill acknowledged in person and in private that it was possible. Hours later, he came back for some dinner party somewhere, and Bill Clinton said to him, forget it, it's not happening, right? He described a similar thing with George Bush Sr. He described a little bit about, not much about Obama doing that kind of stuff, but he described that kind of behavior on a number of occasions, right? So yesterday with Putin expressing all of this stuff and talking about how the US president is not really the leader of the free world and probably hasn't been since John F. Kennedy was assassinated, right? We've been talking for a long time on this show about what happened when Kennedy was assassinated. Robert Kennedy talks about it regularly on his campaign, that Kennedy, as president, realized that there was a power beyond his sight and beyond his control that were trying to pressure him, and that's why he'd closed off relations with the CIA after the Bay of Pigs. I've mentioned many times that Trump was unable to close the US border in the south. Why? Do you think Trump has some like compromising thing where he had to keep the border open? Maybe. I mean, I don't know everything about Trump, but Trump looks like one of the least blackmailable people ever in the end, right? In the end. So even he was unable to close the border because there are powers beyond his vision and beyond his sight. Now, about this piece of control and where it's coming from and that contrast, right? Let me get the David Sachs quote that I have here. And this is the cognitive decline part and this leader of the free world. And then again, what's beyond their sight, right? This principle that the US president hasn't been in control of even the US. Forget about leader of the free world. They're not the leader of the US, right? Here's what David Sachs says. Biden's cognitive decline is a feature, not a bug of Democrat elites. They already control the CIA, FBI, State Department, and other ruling institutions. All they need is a rubber stamp. A strong president might get in the way, which is exactly why populist Republicans want one. Now, that's exactly it. I've said for you for a while, the reason why Biden is president is not because they think he's capable to beat Trump. He's the most blackmailable, the most. Because he's the most blackmailable, he's the person that they can manipulate the most. And that's what I think we're seeing. That's what I think we've been seeing for a long time now, right? He's not the leader of the free world. He's not even the leader of his own party. He's not even the leader of Washington, Inc. Nothing, right? This is a guy who was put into place in order to try and run some propaganda against Trump, but his brain broke while it was happening. Now, one of the interesting things, right, about the whole interview, and it's exactly something that I guess you could say fits my own narrative bias and fits my own worldview, but it was interesting to hear, right? Which was Putin describe what's going on with the dollar. Remember, I predicted that he'd be talking about the dollar and BRICS and what's going on with that. So first of all, he came out and said that the US using the dollar the way they did for war and for military purposes was a huge strategic failure and a mistake and something that will it can't be taken away now. He says the dollar is the main weapon used by the US to preserve its power across the world. Even US allies are now downsizing their dollar reserves. He talks about BRICS growing rapidly, and he talks about how it's a matter of physics, right? But he talked about one other thing, and it's something that is really at the foundation of why we call this show The Breakup, why we talk about broken brains, why we talk about mental illness. He turned around and described the world in terms of a person, that a world can have mental illness just like people, right? And I've been saying that for a long time. I mean, that's literally what this show is about. Now, he talked about right brain, left brain. I often talk about the Jungian shadow and ego, right? That you can have these two parts. And one of the most important parts of psychological health is having money that allows you to have a feedback loop so that you can know what's wrong with you and understand your shadow, and you're able to individuate it and process it and help yourself achieve a higher level of mental health. You can't suppress the shadow. You have to deal with it, right? And on a national level and an individual level, these things are almost the same, that a country is really just a collection and a living organism and behaves much the same as an individual. So he said that. He said what we have here and is a world that is going through intense mental illness, right? So remember what I said, World War III is a psychological and economic war. The hot war is another part of it, but it's more or less what Putin even described, right? Putin described missile defenses in the interview, described achieving a system for global security. Now, you got to remember, Putin is a propagandist. He even admits in the interview that he would never go against US propaganda because it's the best in the world, that US media, in particular financial media, control the world. He said that specifically. He said the US financial media controls the world, right? So he described in this situation about, you know, the US not wanting a joint defense system, more or less forcing him into this aggressive hypersonic missile development thing because they wouldn't. It was another one of these instances of presidents not giving him what he wanted. In this case, he talked about Condoleezza Rice and other people that thought it was a good idea at first, and then later on told him, you know, go pound cement. So, you know, and when he describes he's a bad propagandist, he wouldn't go against the United States. Well, he was, and last night he did his propaganda and he completely won. He got some luck, right? Biden opened his mouth and created this contrast principle, thereby making his 30-minute explanation of the historical intricacies of Ukraine and Russia stick out even more, because Biden doesn't know where he got his rosary from. Like, he doesn't know the name of the church where his son died. He doesn't know that, right? I think it's much worse than you even realize. I mean, Biden is, think about the drugs they have him on to even keep him there performing in any case. I mean, think about when he's not on them. Think about when there's no ice cream and drugs and they're just trying to get him, you know, back up and capable of taking drugs and ice cream again. I mean, he must get to those situations too, right? It's a little bit like what Alex Jones said, that he walks around the White House and doesn't know where he is, right? I think that's the case. I think that's the case. So again, he talked about the sanctions he talked about the adaptation to this mental illness, to the sickness, to the psychological sickness that's pervading the world. And he said that you've got to adapt. And BRICS countries are doing that. They're adapting to a changing landscape. And he said America's choice in how to adapt is clear now, right? They're doing it by lashing out a little bit like the way Biden was lashing out yesterday. I mean, again, we can get into these microcosm talks, right? Biden really was the embodiment of America today. That was it. What you were looking at with Biden is what America is today, right? It's an opaque, mentally ill, can't understand where the incentives are coming from, can't create any productive capacity. No one's interested in working with this partner. No one's interested in, no one trusts them. No one believes in any of their deals. None of it, right? America has what he described, what Putin described, is suffering greatly from its self-conceit, right? And that's a part of the mental illness that America is going through. And the conceit is in the money. The conceit, where he put the conceit, is in the money, which is exactly what I've been saying. It's literally what the show is about, right? That America has this incredible blind spot, and all it needs to do is forget that patriotism and the dollar have nothing to do with each other. That America is much older than its dollar, much older than the Federal Reserve, and that the actual organization of the United States can go forward without a US dollar. The fake thing they created in Washington, D.C. to win World War II is where the dollar comes from. That war machine. And that's what Putin described. He described a broken war machine. And it's why he actually explains, according to him now, I don't know if it's truly this, but that's why he said he went and defended the Russian people there. He couldn't leave Russians in the face of this war machine. It had to be repelled. And he described things. I don't think he went as far back into World War I, but I think he did describe what we're seeing as competing systems of war finance. and whether or not we want to do that, or whether or not we want to put it to an end forever, right? So that's what I heard. Now, the mental illness part was really, again, continues to be important, because he talked about the business of war, how the business of war is what's spreading the mental illness. And I think that's what most Bitcoiners have been saying for a long time, right? We've been saying that the structures of taxation that come with financial policies benefit certain industries, in this case, the financial engineers who have captured the media, who work hand in glove with the military industrial complex. And there you go. You got it, right? Petrodollar is a big part of that, but that's all over now. And Putin described why it's over, and that it's like the setting of the sun. There's nothing you can do to stop it. There's nothing you can do to prevent it. It's going to happen. America can choose to react the way it's doing, which is to try to maintain its position, or they can adapt, right? So his advice was adapt. Now, the contrast principle is going to continue to be an important thing, right? Biden simply can't even defend himself. He gets up and has to try to explain what's going on with his kid. But it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse, because here's what happened. Tucker, before he left Russia, I didn't know this. Okay, he talked to Ed Snowden. Great, right? But they didn't record a show. He just spoke with Ed Snowden. But he spoke with someone else. Do you know who he spoke with? He spoke with Tara Reid. I had no idea. Tara Reid, who is a former White House or Hill staffer, like worked in the Senate or something, says she was sexually assaulted or whatever by Biden, right? So she actually moved to Russia because she's worried she's going to get popped. Yeah, I didn't know that. I thought she was like the Clinton chicks that go, Juanita Broderick and all these ladies that just, rant and rave and get angry. I believe them. Well, some of it, but the point here is that Tucker went and interviewed her in Russia. I didn't know she was there. Now, I don't know anything about what happened between Joe Biden and Tara Reid, obviously. I don't even really know the rumors, right? What I do know is he's incapable of defending himself. What I do know is he's going to get another round of people saying he did this and he did that. And I don't think he's capable of getting up there on a stage and saying, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. He's not at the level of Bill Clinton, and he's not at the level of Trump. Remember, the Trump thing that they had to confuse was that he got mad and disparaged the woman for accusing him. It was a defamation. There was no rape, right? It was defamation. So, thinking about this from the point of view of what's coming next, I think Biden is going to be left trying to defend a whole new file that we didn't even see coming, right? And I don't think he's got the stamina. Now, all of that happened, okay, Putin and Biden, all of this happens while the Supreme Court is listening to the Trump Denver, Colorado ballot or no ballot case, the one that they picked up at that court, right? So they picked up the Colorado case, and Justice Clarence Thomas did my trick. Okay, I'm not trying to say everything's going my way today, but everything's going my way. So Clarence Thomas, he's got the Colorado lawyer there, who's arguing for Trump to be off the ballot because of the 14th article in the Constitution, right? And so what does Clarence Thomas do? He does my trick. He asks him to explain, right? This is what I do for January 6th insurrection people. I always pretend I was out of the country, right? I was in where I am here in Barbados, right? And if you remember the day January 6th happened, people like me thought it was hilarious. We were laughing. The whole thing on Twitter was funny because we don't watch the fake news. We weren't there sitting, oh, it's an insurrection. We were like, look at these pranksters, hilarious. Ha, ha, ha. But the next day it was turned into something else. And everyone was warning. Cernovich was warning. Everyone was warning. This is going to be used. This is a plant. This is going to be the worst thing ever. Not everyone got that, right? So what I do all the time is I pretend that I never heard about the insurrection. I get people to explain it to me, right? I didn't hear about that. What happened? Now, Clarence Thomas didn't do that exactly, but he did the thing where he made the person explain to him why it was that the insurrection thing would apply. So the guy had to sort of argue for this being an insurrection, and the states can declare an insurrection, right? That's kind of what he came to, that a state itself can declare it. And that was the trap. So Clarence Thomas says, so you mean to say that the U.S. states that would have been readmitted to the United States, the Confederate States could have taken a presidential candidate off the ballot if they didn't like him. And the guy was like, so it was excellent, right? He made the thing where you got to make them explain it to you and you play a little dumb. So he played a little dumb and made someone try to explain it, right? And it always works with the insurrection thing, right? Never argue the insurrection thing. Make them explain it to you. Make them convince you an insurrection happened, and they'll never be able to, right? They'll just say, oh, people died. And they say, well, I never heard about anyone dying. Oh yeah, I heard about that girl. Wasn't she a MAGA girl? Wasn't she shot by the security? And then there was a police officer killed. I didn't hear about that, right? And then they'll look it up. Look it up. Go ahead. And they look it up and they find out he had a heart attack. You could do it all day, right? It's one of my hobbies. It's one of my hobbies to have broken brain people explain to me the time when America had an insurrection. It's one of my favorite things to do, right? The weaponless coup. Yeah. That's Richard says the weaponless coup. That's one of the things that I use too. So excuse me, they didn't bring guns, So what I'll ask a dumb question like, where did they get the cache of weapons? And they'll be like, there were no weapons, Oh. So Trump, of course, is going to win this 9-0, apparently. Here's what people are saying is going to happen in this case. They're saying it's going to be 9-0. He's going to get every judge on his side. It looks like this thing's going absolutely nowhere. So now we know that the contrast principle, right, applies to Putin and Biden. Trump also benefits from the contrast principle. There's a viral video of him going out today with the UFC fighter Sean Strickland, and Trump is kind of pretend shadowboxing him, right? And James Kirkpatrick writes, Trump joking and squaring up with UFC fighters even as the system tries to destroy him is quite a contrast to Biden stumbling around, yelling angrily, confusing countries, and dodging accountability because he's too stupid to be considered a responsible adult by the law. So it gets better, though. It gets better. Here's where things are headed, right? By Trump now more or less completely destroying the reputation of most American institutions. Here's the realization some libtards and broken brain people are coming up with, right? This comes from Steve Schmidt, right? Steve Schmidt. What does he say? He says, if Donald Trump wins, thousands of his appointees will come into office and they will strip bare the federal government. They will disassemble the government of the United States. And then someone has the old Chad meme, your terms are acceptable, which is where it's headed, right? Which is where it's headed. That's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to destroy Washington, D.C. We're going to rip apart everything that's there. And there's going to be nothing left. The states are going to have to assume way more responsibility. We're going to shrink DC down to its constituent parts. We're going to strip it down to a bare judiciary, a bare legislative branch, and a bare executive. And we're going to probably get rid of most of the executive level departments that were created after and during the Depression and World War II. So the SEC, gone. We're doing the Malay thing. Shit, kill it, shit. We're doing that. We're headed straight there, guys. We're headed straight to shit. Motosierra. We're going to take the chainsaw and we're going to fuck shit up. It's going to be hilarious. So, take the numbers from last night, right? I think Tucker, just on X alone, is over 100 million views already. I watched it on the website because it was faster and it came up. It was there first, right? So I went there and checked that out there. Check out the read technique. I think that's kind of your process with J6ers. Yeah. So I don't even know what he got on the website. I don't know what he got on YouTube yet, but it's 100 million just on X. So the numbers last night in total, the fake news got maybe 1 million viewers on MSNBC, 500,000 on CNN, right? They can't fight this fight. They can't fight it. There's just no way. So we got big changes coming. We got big changes coming. America, I don't think will ever be the same. they've used the dollar and they've precipitated this trouble. And that's why we're going to head in this direction. Let me find my last little quote here. Trump Supreme Court, how will change? Yeah, okay. So let's go to what where I had let's say a problem with what Putin was saying and where I think things are headed, where Putin got it wrong, basically, right? So he described the mental illness, right? Again, exactly what I've been saying. The reason I use the mental illness thing is because well, I don't think America's screwed. I don't think they're screwed. I think America's going to be fine, right? I think, yeah, we're already there. I think America is going to be fine. I think we're going to make it out of this because, so here's how, right? If you think about this mental illness piece and what Putin was saying, he says the world is suffering from this mental illness now. And that was when they were talking about the money, right? It was during the money conversation. He said, that's why the BRICS people are doing this. And that's why the US has to adapt. That's why it's using sanctions. And that's why it's using these other things, right? Big pharma will not cure the mental illness. No. So in the end, the mental illness, now, again, Putin went with his right brain, left brain thing and said, in the end, nations are going to have to come together and nations are going to have to do this and nations are going to have to do that, right? And that'll be the future. Maybe. My answer is that the mental illness he's describing is because of nationally, when money is national debt. When you can issue money by fiat, by a government as the only issuer, what you end up creating is this inability to have any feedback and checks and balances on government itself. They create the money. They don't have to listen to the problems. So that's what creates the mental illness in the business model, right? Or the governance model of the nation state, and having money attached to that is truthfully what's causing the mental illness. So I believe that Putin has slightly misdiagnosed any country, not just America, any country who has a monopoly on the issuance of the global reserve currency in this case, will eventually abuse it, and it will eventually lead to this kind of mental illness. If it is government debt and words of government, fiat, decrees of government that are money, right? So now Putin used the right brain, left brain, nation state model and used that to predict the future. I'm close to what he's saying. I'm not using right brain, left brain. I'm using the Jungian ego subconscious, the feedback loop that comes from money, and changing the type of money that provides the necessary feedback loop for society to go through the same process of mental health reorganization as an individual would, by individuating our shadow and having feedback and understanding what's wrong with the world. So by, and as I said, Jack Posobiec, many people have said this, that the nation state is the building block of the prosperous world. I think it has been until now. But Putin continues to describe the future as being nation state based. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think that the different constituent parts are going to still have a role. I still think we're going to have something like jurisdictions and nation states, but it's not them agreeing in some credentialed way. He kept referring to experts, right? Experts get together and experts sign this. We don't have those anymore. Those are all gone. In the case of law, or in the case of economics, right? Economics there's no experts. It's a fake science. There's nothing like an expert economist. There's no such thing. So there's people who call themselves that. There's people who can do financial modeling and predictions, and that's all relevant. There's something there, right? But in general, economics is much more psychological than it is mathematical, right? There's very little science to it. There's numbers, no math. Math is not important there. The economy itself is a psychological engine, and having a better money as fuel for the psychological engine is what gets you there. Right now, the money is the petrodollar, and it's out of gas. It doesn't work anymore. We can't actually secure anything. We need a rule of law. I'm not saying there's no rule of law, for sure. I'm not saying there's no rule of law. Rule of law is definitely important. He needs to read The Sovereign Individual. Yeah. I'm saying what the principal organizing factor is, right? The principal organizing factor. Money is a better one than nation states. Rule of law will still exist in commercial agreements for sure. I'm not saying you don't need a court, but that's part of separation of powers, which is in the rule of law, right? That's a part of it. So I'm not calling for any form of I am an anarcho-capitalist, but I think that still means there's courts, right? I mean, you can still have a court system, you can still have laws. So there you go. So it looks like it's all happening, guys. I mean, the broken brains don't have the capacity to fight this. What we can expect next is either more anger and vitriol, but I don't think that's what we're going to get. I think the left is finally within their echo chamber starting to hear the news about Biden. They're going to have to adjust. As I said, I'm a little off. I said they'd kill him by Christmas. I think he's a goner by the summer. Who to replace him with is the question. We don't know. We don't know. It looks like, though, it's not confirmed yet, but it looks like you're going to see Vivek Ramaswamy as the vice president. I think the whole Ronna McDaniel's story was really about him getting his side of the deal in order to agree to be vice president. So I think that's going to come. We reached out to him. I think he'll be joining us at Bitcoin 2024. It's not confirmed yet, but we're going to see. My brain is broken trying to see any hope in this circus. Well, you're looking, again, it's not a numbers game. Bitcoin doesn't come to you from democracy. It's not a voting thing. If you have the more exceptional people, think about it in the same way that Mexico, not Egypt, Mexico, I know the difference. I use the conquistador example, right? Better weapons. The weapons of World War III are psychological health and wealth. If you can manipulate those two, you can win the war. And it's the same thing. It's the same advantage that steel swords gave the conquistadors. It's the same advantage that all those colonial empires had in weapons. If you have a stronger psychological state, that literally means you're eating better. Like, it's that simple. We'll win because we eat steak. Right? It's enough. It's enough. Vivek was on Geeks and Gamers channel. No, Courtney, I know Vivek well, not well, but I had him on the show last year. Not this show, but the big show. And I was reaching out to him since before he was even a presidential candidate. So, and we love Geeks and Gamers. So he's physically coming, and it's the week after the nomination. So he'll be coming as vice president. If he's nominated, in fact. So he'll be coming, and it's in July. It'll be the week after. Oh, by the way, the code I gave you yesterday, Space Drop, right? My promo code Space Drop, not airdrop, Space Drop. Space Drop only works for the tickets to the show, and it's a different link for the different tickets. Sorry, I said yesterday that it works at the store and it will get you a discount on everything. That was my promo code from last year. I'll get a new promo code, I think, that works at the store. But for now, the promo code Space Drop just works for the Hong Kong event, May 9th to 10th, and the Nashville event, July 25th to 27th. So promo code Space Drop. So I know there was a confusion yesterday. I had someone who tried to use the promo code at the store. I thought the promo code was the same as last year. It's not. I can get one of those, but I don't have it yet. So what I got is the one I got. So there you go. All right, let me get some Rumble comments here and see what the Rumble folks are saying. And then we got to get on with our day. It's a great one. Bitcoin is just a pumping today. We love seeing it pump like this. Always fun. All right, we got 200 and something people in the room, and people are doing well. Hello. Look at all these comments. Rumble folks, Bitcoin price pumps. I like it. Good morning, freaks. Good morning, Morand. Orange pilling getting easier. That's what I mean. So, Courtney, that's part of the enthusiastic take of the morning. It's getting a lot easier. It's a lot easier to tell people the whole thing's screwed up, which is why I voted for Biden 5 times. I knew he would be the best thing for Bitcoin. I knew it. And if they still don't have fun staying poor. Yeah. MLK Jr. is rolling in his grave. Courtney 218, my kids get off. Hey kids, get off my lawn. Courtney, no, it was my own kids. It was my own kids. Darn, I wanted to hear. Yeah. And he called Tucker out for trying to join the CIA, which I thought was great. Prednisone is beautiful, as brutal, Courtney 218 says. Yeah. They're just figuring out he is mentally incapacitated, but he's president. I can't believe this is really our president. I also can't believe the majority of our public actually believe the media. Presidents are just puppets, for the Uniparty. How many more acts in this play? Literally getting old. LFG Bitcoin story. It never ends because our government is one big act, Courtney says. Sure feeling that way. Yeah, on and on. It's a pretty good way to look at our world. Compare Biden to Putin. The difference is huge. Yeah, waiting for revelations. They're coming. Patience is a virtue. We'll all die without ice cream and drugs. And our government and pharma has created all this. So yes, money. Yeah. Morand, ice cream and drugs. We love it. Morand, I forgot I had sex with that woman. It is elder abuse. Yeah. Yeah. Welcome from Colorado, Courtney. Welcome from Colorado. The insurrection without weapons, very ridiculous. But these malignant clowns wield dangerous, tremendous weapons, powers, dangerous, very dangerous. They are. Trump signed the CARES Act and employed Bolton. I hope you're right, Nolan. Well, Bolton was a trick, right? Bolton was Trump hiring a stupid person because he knew it was useful in negotiations. He literally would bring him just to scare people. So he didn't actually hire Bolton because he thought he was smart. He hired Bolton to bully people. That's it, right? So the Bolton thing was deliberate. Trump wasn't like, I need his brain power. Trump hired Bolton. I think this is confirmed. I forget where I've seen it confirmed. I think Trump has even said as much, right? He hired people because people thought he was crazy, because he is nuts. He's a nutbag. So Trump would leave him with people just to freak them out. And then, because he's actually crazy, right? So Trump's different, right? Now, the CARES Act, yeah, I mean, look, Trump is not perfect. No one will ever argue that, right? That's why Trump makes people like me love him, because he fails. He makes mistakes, and you want to help him and make him, if you could just do it better, he'd be so close. So that's part of it. But we love him. All right. Only a matter of time. Prove election was bad and hand it back to Trump. I ain't voting this year. I give up. Are you? You should vote for Trump, Shreya Bitcoin. I'm in Canada. Our election is a sham. It's all a hustle. Yeah, ours are really no good in Canada. That's for sure. Really no good. All right, team. That's what I got for today. That's what I got. I guess that theory is why Fetterman exists where he is. We're Fetterman 2024 voters. Courtney, you got to read my book, Bitcoiner's Guide to NPC Management. Fetterman's the only hope for America. He should be the president. He's perfect. We couldn't do better than Fetterman. He's awesome. So there you go. Hit the like button. Need more breakup in their algo. We love it. Great show, Nolan. We just love laughing with you. That's what we're here for. Jason, great breakup session. Thanks, Nolan. My pleasure, guys. Let me find my cup of coffee and bid you all a good day. Yeah? Peace, everyone. And it doesn't get better than this for now, right? We might have a few more bad days ahead of us, but I told you 2024 was going to be the biggest year for Bitcoin, and we are absolutely on target. Biden melting down and decaying in front of us is the best thing we can hope for associations and contrast with the dollar.